things which are actually extremely technical, extremely boring, and extremely challenging, which is about transport, which is never really sexy, and there's talking about really the challenges around climate change and sustainability. So, building on what Robin also said, we at the World Resources Institute, working in many countries and cities around the world, working also with cities, with citizens, with businesses, to really help to contribute research and technical advice into a policy to really enable also more livable cities. And I'm extremely proud also to be here today, and thanks also for coming and joining us also on that journey. So I'd like to build a little bit more also on what Robin said and get a little bit more also into the detail in terms of what we can do also with this new strive, with this new opportunity around also new mobility. So, as Robin also said, we are in a time of urgency. When we want to tackle climate change, we have to take action now. And thankfully also the world came together more than a year ago in Paris saying we are all together in this. From also the very poor country in the global south to the most rich country in the global north. And we all have to put our share together, and we also have to change also how we act in the future. And thankfully also we have seen also these processes still also are thriving, and all kinds of governments are also buying into that. But we currently also not on track. We're really also moving also to a world also which is 4 to 5, or even also, as Robin also explained, also up to 6 degrees. And that's also not a world also we want our children also to live in. But also when we talk about transport, this is not about climate change. If you also have to deal also with your day-to-day problems on congestion, on air pollution, which is caused also by transport, but there is a thriving also the economy. So how we also create something which enables the access everybody needs to also get to education, also to health services everywhere around the world, and to improve that, and at the same time also tackling climate change, being also more efficient, more clean. But when we talk about the futures of our cities, this is all about also transport. It's really about also making also these things and bringing these things also together. So we had another process on the global scale where again every country around the world said we want to have a more livable place in the future, which is called the Sustainable Development Goals. And in New York in 2015, the world came together with all the leaders and saying we want to take action on these issues. We want to take action on health, we want to take action on poverty, we want to take action also on climate. And again, there's not a specific goal on transportation, but transport is in the middle of that. Transport can only also be clean when it's also related also to clean energy. Transport, currently we have 1.2 million people every year so dying on road fatalities, dying on roads. 1.2 million people. So the world said, well, we want to also make transport safer, and here saying we want to halve that also within the next 5 years. So these also are global processes. But this also relates also to our day-to-day life, and these processes will be only really successful if that also relates then also to the quality of life in your surrounding. So we have seen globally two key processes happening, two key trends. One is urbanization, and you experience that here in Liverpool, in Istanbul every day. More and more people are also coming, and you have to provide also the space, and the city is growing and growing, and we see that particular in these days in Africa and Asia as well. At the same time, with economic growth, often we have seen also the motorization increasing dramatically, not just also the numbers also of cars, but also how people are also using their cars in their day-to-day life. And that also relates then also to climate change. Is almost impossible when we look into current trends on even doubling or so again or so the amount of car use around the world. Then also we stuck even also more in congestion. So here a more technical approach to that. What is needed is a three-pronged approach. Or we say avoid, shift, and improve. So we want to reduce the amount of travel. Either also to better land use planning so that I can actually access all the services I need, but also to new technology through the internet to see also how can I also avoid my day-to-day travel to work, and we already see also that things are changing. The second is also shifting towards shared modes, shifting towards walking and cycling, and to enable also more capacity also on the road and using that also in a way that everybody can actually travel. As well as we need also the technology improvements. We need cleaner fuels, we need also cleaner vehicles, and all that needs to come together. But when it comes also to the way also we build and extend also our cities, we have to be really aware of how we build and where we build, and so that we not also get into the American model of more and more so to sprawl, so that people, the only chance also to get also to anywhere so is by car. So here is really creating a way of urban planning and transport also bringing also that together. So what we say is we need also cities and development of cities which are compact, connected, and coordinated, so that these processes also come together. So I'd like to also then also move to also what Robin already started. The question is on new mobility. And suddenly also the discussion on transport, which is always like a little bit not particularly sexy on buses, on metros, on high capacity, suddenly also gets an appeal. It's really exciting in these days also talking about autonomous cars, about also new technologies, new opportunities. And that's also an opportunity here to really also rethink the system, but also how can I steer that in a way that it really also helps. It helps for climate, it helps also for access. And it gets a lot of media attention. It's get a lot of attention also to the big players. Big money is suddenly also there. Venture capital comes every day also in these new startups. A lot of investment. When we think about, we heard about also the value of Airbnb. When we think about the largest one currently in terms of mobility, is a company called Didi. Who have heard of Didi so far? Some of them. So Didi is a Chinese Uber. So they actually have a value of 40 to 60 billion. They are currently also having 400 million users in 400 cities, and now they're also going global. They actually kicked out Uber out of China. So really big players with a lot of money. Are they actually making money? No, they're making a loss. Uber currently also making a huge loss, but they can also afford that because there is continuous also venture capital and capital is in that. So the long business model is also the questioners of these solutions. But suddenly it gets attention, it gets money into the sector. So here we talk there about new mobility. We're talking about reinventing the ownership. It's about also using the data. It's developing also these new technologies. So suddenly a sector becomes more attractive and gets more attention. In terms of the commuter experience, in terms of companies on providing also data and apps about also product innovations like also the ride hailing, we see as well as solutions like Robin described with shared vehicle. But the question is a new concept, is that just also, is it sexy or is it also sustainable so that it really also helps then also people also moving in a better and cleaner way also from A to B. So in transport we talk about we have to manage the demand, we also have to provide the right supply. And what we finally want to have is better accessibility also for all in terms of passengers and goods. But here suddenly also a new area comes into play. So that's an opportunity with disruptive solutions. But the question is this new mobility, is that also new sustainable? So when we said also that we want to have more equitable access, that we want to reduce those emissions, reduce injuries and fatalities, and also improve really also the urban efficiency. So the costs also for businesses also transfer goods and people also is reduced. So therefore, I would put forward for further discussion 6 specific actions to think about how to make that also sustainable. First, really, we need a system integration. We need a vision also how these new services can actually be part also of a transportation system. What we currently also see, for example, in the city of New York in the last 5 years, with also Uber coming in, the average speed reduced by 12%, because these cars are also stopping, leaving passengers in and out. There is more traffic and more congestion, even though so it's shared. So therefore, to think about where do I need also these services that they really also help and can contribute also to better mobility and not contribute also to more congestion. So here, can we also create also a guidance on not competing where you have really limited space and the corridor capacity is limited, so therefore also use it also with the metro, use it also with the high capacity buses and not also clock it up also with new services competing here. The second is really about the question of the future financial model. As I said, there's a risk also on creating this big bubble. Is a lot of fantasy currently in the market in terms of the values of these markets. Currently, they're all making a loss. So the question is also how to make that also more profitable. That means there's at least to increase the prices that are actually fair and reflect also the service in a way. And we also have to see, is that also picked up? Some people say, and Robin also said, Uber will only survive if they have autonomous cars. So now we're creating all these jobs, and then also in 5 to 10 years, then there's people and individuals who are investing also in their cars, which we see also in countries also like India, companies like Ola. Individuals are also building their business into that, and then 5 years later, 7 years later, so they lose it. So being also aware of that and thinking about what is a fair price structure also to enable also jobs, but also make that also part of the process. The other opportunity is for the city. These cars using all the streets and making use also of that as a business model. Where's also the opportunity for the city also to gain also some of that income? It's very easy now also to track every single kilometer, every single mile. And can we also get a certain levy? Don't call it congestion charge, because then immediately also it will not fly and because it goes also through the political process. But if you say this is also a levy also for my people, for the infrastructure, which also helps me in other ways, then it comes to a fair pricing, and that also is an income which then also everybody can benefit. And then you can also see how this also helps for services also outside the city, because that's also where less money is, but also where people also need the access. And we have seen that also in the US, that there is, in fact, already subsidies also for providing these services in less dense areas, because that's also where buses also not can reach everybody in the right manner. The third, and Robin also were already highlighting and pitching that, open data. Open data so that this can be also used for new businesses, new ideas, but also for better management, for better planning. So ownership. So having here so the ownership also in the public and make better use of that. And finally, in terms of measuring impact, because what we currently don't know or not enough. As we hear also at a university, what is the real impact? Is it really also helping the society at the moment? Or is it also just inducing also the traffic and increasing also the emissions? So here really is a plea for far more attention to, is it helping in terms of equity? Is it helping in terms of reducing emissions? Is it also safer? What are also kind of standards and regulation I need? There's a huge gap currently, and we see also that to make also the right decision to steer that is needed to really also reflect and have far more analysis around that, and then also you can steer such a system also in a way that it's benefiting for all. And that also leads then also to the question of policy and regulation. It's not about killing the market. I think too many cities around the world saying, "Oh, we don't like that." And there's a lobby also from the taxi industry, so therefore so we stop that. The same as 100 years ago when there was a transition also from horse carts to taxis. They also tried the same thing, like, "Oh no, we don't want to have taxis here. We also want to stick also with our horse carts." That will not work. It will happen, and the transition will happen. But it's a question also, can you also then enable and regulate that in a way that's actually work for the city? So we really also need there clear regulation which enable also the market also to operate, to strive, but also that is part of the system. And finally, and I use actually a very, very, very bad picture here, but innovation is not just all about the car. There's a company in Beijing, it's called Mobike. Within 9 months, they put 70,000 modern bikes without a station in the city center, which you can use with the app and can hire per minute and go from A to B. Suddenly also China, it becomes really attractive suddenly in China again also to cycle. And they already get venture capital around 300 to 400 million, and they said, I believe that in 3 years I will have 1 million bikes in Beijing. And so there's creativity in the whole space and the opportunity also with technology suddenly also to do new things. And same also with the question on urban freight and question also on how can I also use my minibuses, which are part also of the transportation system here, far more creative, far more also on-demand driven, that is actually helping also more people, having higher efficiency, and also using with that as a technology. So with that, I would plea here that cities need to get back more also on the driving seat, together also with businesses, together also with the community, and set the framework, set the vision also what technology can actually do for the citizens. Otherwise, there's a technology will just do it to the city and probably not with a positive effect. Thank you very much.